Welcome everyone to another exciting episode of FiST Chat, your weekly dose of everything film, science and technology related. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How you doing, Steve? All good, are you?
I'm fine. Hello there everyone in FiST Chat land. Very exciting week for those of us, Facebook, got a lot like.
Absolutely. And we'll just dive into our main topic. As Steve suggested there, it's all about Facebook today. And in case you'd been living under a rock somewhere, Facebook went public just this past week. And I felt concerned as soon as I heard that. I knew it was coming, but somehow now that it's official, I don't know if it's a good thing, a bad thing, or what. What were your first impressions on it, Steve?
Well, I'm a bit neutral on it, but the exciting thing is that it marks a real coming of age for social media. I mean, who would have thought even 10 years ago that you could make money from somebody else doing something? I mean, all Facebook do is provide the platform, a site. You know, there's 1 billion people out there providing content and viewing it, and it's basically getting money for nothing.
Well, just on the numbers alone, it's a remarkable achievement for something that started only 8 years ago to now be valued at $104 billion. Quite amazing. And that is an incredible achievement. I was just noticing the initial story was listing Facebook as being listed at $38 per share, but I just noticed today that it took a bit of a tumble in the share price by about 10%. Seems like investors are going a little lukewarm on it.
Well, just for the FiST Chat fans out there, that is serious. On the initial IPO offering, FiST Chat was worth $2 million. Just for anyone who wants to buy the marquee. Now it's down 10%, so we're probably at about 1.8, Ben?
Yeah, that should be right. But I think we're covered, aren't we?
We are. As long as Facebook keeps growing. But and this is the thing now. Just getting into the values that you're talking about and being serious about it. It's actually put a value on social media. It's put a value on social marketing, social advertising, and networks. And that is a huge game changer going forwards.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just wondering though. We mentioned in the past, I think, both of us, in relation to things like the issues of privacy in relation to social media and how maybe one day something might blow up privacy-wise. Now, we've been talking business here in terms of what this whole Facebook IPO thing is. But I was just thinking, if now that they're beholden to shareholders who require obviously returns on, their investment. And the only way Facebook makes money really is off of all of our data. What happens to all the accountability issues there? Is there going to be, do you think there'll be some sort of issue where, the shareholders, sort of rights sort of override ours as users?
I think you've got to go back and look at the original Facebook thing, Ben, and you've hit on it there perfectly. I mean, Facebook originally was fun. It was social. There was nothing riding on it. There was some whiz kid out there somewhere with a whole bunch of servers making us connect, helping us connect. That was great. Now it's a business. Now it's serious. And that's the sort of thing that, for any brand, it changes the way people view it. And, there are a couple of other issues now as well. The privacy issue is one, and I think there will be far more aggressive marketing through Facebook now. It'll be a commodity, it's been commoditized, that could drive people away. But on top of that privacy issue, there's some other issues I think that, haven't really been looked at in full yet, and that is that with that commercialisation comes a whole change to the Facebook culture. They've been buying up companies like Instagram and that to maintain their lead, because we all know that any other social media platform could challenge it. To date, they have basically taken out any challenger by incorporating it into Facebook. And now that they're a publicly listed company, would you say antitrust laws apply to them?
Yeah, well,
I don't want to be the first person to bring it up, but I might have been.
oh well, it's not. It wouldn't exactly be the first company in Silicon Valley to fall victim to a antitrust any antitrust issues, but yeah, that was really what I was thinking. I think when I saw that, because I think more and more as we go forward, just as a side issue, I came across another article called "Facebook Resistors: Why Millions Refuse to Like Social Media Giant." And basically, a lot of what's in there is people that simply refuse to use Facebook for whatever reason, whether they simply don't like Facebook, they've got some issues with privacy, they see it as a distraction, preventing you from interacting with real people. Or even just something as simple as I don't need to talk to people I met, maybe 6 months, 12 years ago, and now we're connected somehow through this wonderful piece of technology. And one interesting thing that was mentioned in that article was that if Facebook hits a wall in terms of how many users that they actually can get, not that there doesn't look like they're any close to reaching that wall, but it's almost as if there is a limit, and there might be some issues in terms of revenue raising for them if they are now going to be beholden to shareholders. It's not all about, they might have some issues in terms of raising, the profits that are going to be expected from them now.
Well, let's just look back at a bit of Facebook recent history, Ben. Weren't they well on their way to 1 billion users? And they sort of stalled in May last year was the first time they didn't grow.
Yeah.
So, there are going to be natural and finite limits. This is another topic that this chat covers. You're not going to have exponential growth all the way to 7 billion people. Even Coca-Cola, one of the most successful brands in the world, does not have everyone drinking it, even though everyone can, I think. There'd be very few places in the world you couldn't get it. So, maybe Facebook's hit its natural limit. And if it has, then the only way for it to go is back down at least a little bit again, just to stabilise. And the question is, what is its real worth? And if people do turn off to it, if there is a challenger that doesn't, succumb now, I mean, Facebook's got, 104 billion. I mean, it'd be a good time to have a pretty good social media platform, I'd suspect, and I'd probably sell for 4 billion. What about you?
I'm not going to put a dollar amount on it. But the interesting thing, though, is that it would seem that maybe they've hit some sort of user limit, but they're going to have to find new ways, I guess is what I'm getting at, is to generate revenue out of those users. And is that going to extend to crossing a line somewhere in terms of the data that we're giving them on a daily basis? Because the way the platform is set up, it very easily encourages you to share lots of information online, and it does it. You'd almost think at a pretense of being totally secure and private, and and again, it's something that I've mentioned before, that I'm just wondering if there's something at odds there with their new responsibilities.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I think that there probably would be. I mean, but in perhaps there's no more conflict than there is, say, with Google or Apple having all your data within their systems. If they can track you, if they know what you're doing, and we've talked about this as well. I mean, supermarket chain or shopping loyalty systems.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that Facebook's is any more insidious, except on the old stalker issue, because people see photos of you, they see where you are, what you're up to, who your friends are, and they can infiltrate your information in a much more tangible way than just raw data. But I'm not one of these people that wants to get rally up a whole round of troops with some torches in the middle of the night, go and kill Frankenstein. I think that's a little bit 19th century.
Absolutely. Well, perhaps we can just punctuate this part of our show for today on Facebook by this quote that I found in that article about the resistors to Facebook. Someone's been quoted here saying, "I was a typical user on it once or twice a day, but after a certain point, I sort of resented how it felt like an obligation rather than fun." So that might be an interesting way of
Oh God, yeah. Well, maybe they'll start cancelling your Facebook contract if you don't, show up often enough.
Absolutely. So we'll watch this space at any rate. Okay, we'll move on now. We introduced something last week where we covered some film science and technology topics, just did some quick news bites, and we're going to do that now and just give a bit of a quick run through. So we'll start off with film. You and I both, Steve, are very familiar with the Cannes Film Festival, which we've both attended in the past. Lots of fun, glitz and glamour. That's on at the moment, and looks like it's still doing its thing.
$64 for 4 Diet Cokes.
Yep, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, okay. The old €10 bottle of water that I saw someone buy. I think it was only 50 mils or something like that.
Calorie free.
Yeah, absolutely. But probably one worth mentioning here is that there's a film, an Australian film that's doing fairly well called The Sapphires, which I think had one of the biggest sales in Australian history because of Harvey Weinstein picking it up, which is obviously good for the Australian industry. But just quickly, Steve, I was actually just thinking, this is just another case in point of maybe it's rather an exception to the rule rather than a consistent trend. Whenever, for those of you who aren't in Australia, it's a sort of a running theme that whenever one of these films does well, and it's always a good thing when one of these films does well, it doesn't really automatically lead to a whole series of successful films that come out. And it's always a running thing with the Australian film industry. Is that something you would have expected, do you think, looking at this sort of thing?
Well, it's one of those things, as we know, in terms of making a film and selling a film, there are all sorts of forces involved way beyond the art of making a film. And I think the unfortunate consequences for a market like Australia is, you tend, or marketers who are involved in the film business are quite happy to look for their attachment and pin all their hopes on that. But it doesn't really actually flow on to the mainstream industry, not unless, we actually get 3 or 4 films picked. So it's great to see a film like Sapphires doing well, but unfortunately, I think we all acknowledge it doesn't actually translate to something that's actually fantastic for the industry. Yeah. Fantastic for the film, though, and good on them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's move on to science, and just saw this article you sent through to me this week. Why do some people eat lots and not put on weight? And it's all in the genes, isn't it?
It is all in the genes. One thing that people have to understand is that whatever it is, whether it's weight or your mental state or how athletic you are, it's 50% environment, 50% in the genes. But in the case for some people, when it comes to weight loss, it's a big case of genes. And I'm not talking about big pair of pants. I'm talking about the genetic code giving you an ability to either have a higher metabolism or have mechanisms to deal with depositing fat.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's that whole evolutionary thing as well, isn't there? We haven't evolved. We have had a scarcity of food in most of our history. It's only recently that we've had such an abundance of food, and we don't really have the genes that have evolved to deal with that abundance. So hence you have a lot of overweight people around. So
I'll just wrap that up very quickly. So, like before, I guess any time up until maybe the last couple of 100 years, or before civilization, let's say. So let's go back 5,000 years. You might not eat for a few days after your next meal, so your body was going to store it as fat. Any surplus now is stored as fat. That's what the body does. So if you don't eat for 3 days, you're not going to die.
Okay. That's always good. Okay, let's move on to technology quickly. And we've got scientists shatter quantum teleportation record. And we're not talking about Beam Me Up Scotty here. But what is most interesting, I thought, in this was the idea of its use in transferring data around. That I thought was very interesting and very plausible, I would have thought. A very secure way of transmitting all those ones and zeros around. You think that'll be a good thing? Do you think that'll become commonplace at some point?
Well, it's very interesting. It leads to a couple of scenarios. It means that eventually we'll all have this technology. So you would expect then that we really would be able to talk in private, and I can't imagine that the government would be too happy about that. The second thing, though, that is really exciting is even though you couldn't teleport someone like a human or something like a human using this technology, you could teleport a hologram of yourself that could receive sensory information. So you could actually go to other places, quite possible, and know what it was like.
Sounds like something that Sheldon on The Big Bang Theory would very much appreciate. He would never have to leave his room.
Absolutely. He would be able to explore the universe for sure.
Absolutely. All right, so that's our bit of our news bite section. We'll just finish up now just with a couple of recommendations. I'll just kick this off. I actually listen to a podcast called Mac Break Weekly, which is on the Twit network, and those guys actually provide a lot of useful information in relation to a lot of technology-related products. It's part of a family of shows, and as the name suggests, it's all about Mac and Apple news, and I actually listen to a couple of their podcasts. I listen to it every week and get a lot of useful insights and updates for things that even we talk about sometimes on FiST Chat. So I highly recommend it. Just do a search for it on iTunes and it'll pop up straight away. You can get it in audio or video. And Steve, you have one as well?
Yeah, well, I actually met Randy Olson, filmmaker from the US, who was a Harvard professor and at age 38 went to film school in California and has become quite an incredible documentary producer. Have a look at his website, Shifting Baselines. If you can, just Google that. Have a look at some of his work on, the environment, and you'll enjoy it. He's a very funny guy.
Absolutely. All right, Steve, we're out of time, so thanks again for the chat. Always interesting, and we'll follow this Facebook thing, I think, a little bit more closely in the future. We'll see what happens.
Let's hope FiST Chat's stocks go up.
Absolutely. We're riding on the back of it. All right, so don't forget our website, www.fistchat.com. You can get all our links there and watch our videos and listen to our audio. We'll have some blogs posted this week as well as providing some links to everything we've talked about today. So that's it for this week's episode, so we'll catch you next week.